Monster Classics to just fuck Konami.
I do have something to read off before I get on with the festivities. It's near the 10-year anniversary of the last fanfic that I ever wrote.
How about you wait for Theta to come back? Because he had to run somewhere real quick.
I could try. I'm shit at reading, but I could try.
Well, it's not like I'm going to be putting it up for anybody to read. It's just I'm going to be reading this thing off since it's all told in the first person.
I just need to get my headphones and everything set up real
Get
quick.
this shit right now. Oh god.
Okay. The title is called Best Friends.
Wait, what is this a fanfic of?
You take a wild fucking guess. Anyway,
Dari, I'm just gonna throw that out.
let's get going.
Power Rangers.
When I first met her, I didn't think we'd ever become close friends. I figured we'd just hang out for a while and probably get tired of each other and be miserable again. I was wrong. We were like family. Only between family would two people do something this stupid. But damn it, it was fun too. You should have seen the looks on their faces. We've been planning this for weeks, working out every kink in the system, preparing our bodies. This was going to hurt. Jane looked at me as we peeked through the curtain and said, "You know we're going to catch holy hell over this, right?" I knew. After all, the show was advertised for almost a month, promising more than the average fan could bear. Folks in charge swore on their backs on their kids that everything was cleared with the state commission. We had to leave it at that. If all else fails, we could just sue him. Anyway, finally we gave each other a hug for good luck as Jane's music started up over the PA, Riders on the Storm by Creed. Wasn't exactly her choice of music, but it kind of suits her. She left through the curtain and the crowd went ballistic. People have been waiting for this, and we've been waiting to give it to them. I waited for my music to play over the speakers, and eventually I went as well. I was kind of curious over what they picked for my theme. Cat Scratch Fever by Motorhead. I snickered a little. People gasped over the fact that it was me, but shortly went to roaring acceptance. I've done this before, but never in my own town. Not in front of my friends. When I stepped through the ropes, I had to step carefully. They were replaced with barbed wire. The protective covering for the mat was gone. It was nothing but the wood plating making up the ring. No protection whatsoever. Worst of all, there were fluorescent bulbs everywhere, strung up along the barbed wire. Tables everywhere, and there was never a shortage of chairs. We were wrestlers, and tonight we were fighting each other in an I Quit match. I remember when I first drew my own blood in the ring. I couldn't have been a bigger dipshit. Everyone was looking at me like a pile of dog excrement. Somehow I knew I overdid it, but I wanted to show that I could do it better. I don't know why. Hell, I don't even know why I wanted to belong all of a sudden. Usually I had no problem being one of a kind. Jane was along, as always. She didn't care at first about being a wrestler, but she knew how to show me how not to cut myself too deep. The longer I was learning the craft, the more I appreciated it. As Jane and I removed our coats and shirts, it became more apparent that this was hardly about wrestling. We had pads, elbow and knee, and brawling gloves, so that we both had some protection. The boys were getting a show already just from us being in our bras. This is just chaos. Pure chaos. After the smoke cleared a bit, the bell rang. The match was on, and we were ready to practically kill each other. Jane came forward, as did I, and we locked up. Jane pushed me into the wire, and it hurt like hell, but not like the first time. I was somewhat numb to the pain now. After a few times, it's somewhat normal. The referee was next to us with a mic asking me if I wanted to quit. I said no. Fans knew I wasn't going to end the fight at 30 seconds. That's just stupid. But then so was what we were doing. I turned Jane around and I put her into the wire for a few seconds. The crowd was wincing in unison. Who could blame them? It's not often you see a legit hardcore women's match. I led Jane up from the wire and whip her across the ring and toward the wire again. Jane puts on the brakes, turns around and receives a clothesline. Jane falls to the ground and cusses a bit while wincing. I can't blame her. This puts the wrestler's skills to the ultimate test. You have to land the right way or you're done for good. To make Jane feel better about her position, I drop an elbow on her so I can feel my back hit that solid wood. She's right, it fucking hurts. As I'm lying next to Jane, oh, pardon me, I tell her that it's time to go to work. So I got up and grabbed one of the light tubes. Kids, a word of warning, they're not baseball bats. A baseball bat can hurt, yeah, but the fans aren't stupid. They know that bats can be hollowed out and faked to look like they were swung that hard. And we know better than the bullshit of hardcore wrestling crowd. Jane was almost to her feet as I turned around and held up the light tube, showing the fans that shit was about to go down. I reared back and timed it so that Jane would see it coming. Jane lowered her head so that the impact was light. There was a roar from the crowd as the bulb exploded over Jane's head. As I pulled Jane up, she punched me in the gut. I held it for a few seconds, selling the pain, giving her enough time to grab a bulb from the wire and do the same thing to me. Jane grabbed another bulb, set it on the floor, and whacked me over the head with the first one. As I buckled over, Jane grabbed the other and cracked it over my back. I was standing erect again, but Jane wanted to keep a series going, so she then grabbed the back of my head and drove it into the wood. I saw Jane wipe the sweat from her brow and walk toward me. As she attempts to pull me to my feet, I trip her, sending her face into the wire. The ref immediately goes over and asks her if she wants to quit. She says no, and claps can be heard from the crowd. Hardcore crowds are much like the Japanese audiences. They don't want to be a distraction, so they'll only make noise when it feels appropriate. I exit the ring quickly and grab a chair. I can't bounce against the wire like ropes, so while carrying the chair, I do a U-turn to get some speed. Sometimes using a chair just isn't enough. You have to get creative. So I run toward Jane, still with her back turned to me, and drop-kick the chair into her back. I couldn't see her reaction, but I heard her pain. Evidently, I'm going to have to let her do some stuff to me, otherwise it's going to look too much like a one-sided fight. I pull Jane up and give her a quick slug in quote marks, to the temple. I tell her to hit me, and we trade haymakers. We practiced doing that for weeks, trying to get our fists as close to each other's faces as possible before snapping our heads back. Eventually, Jane stops trying to punch me and picks me up. Some of the people were surprised to see some actual wrestling tonight. Jane slams me into the wood, and I've got my arm over my back, again selling the pain. Not much to sell, though. Jane had his blood running down her chest, and I'm feeling a little on my forehead. Things were getting kind of blurry, but I felt some of those fluorescent balls being placed across my chest, my stomach, and my knees. That one's not staying up. I can tell you that right now. Maybe Jane was afraid to put one across my neck. Who knows? Then Jane puts that same chair over the bulbs. Yeah, that's going to sting for weeks. I couldn't tell where she was at the time, but I figured she was going to drop on me or something. Sure enough, for a split second, I could see Jane's legs coming down on the chair, smashing the bulbs over my flesh. I could hear Jane mouthing for me to run so she can catch me. I knew it was time to parade this thing around the house for a while. So I exit the ring and walk toward the timekeeper. Poor guy, he had to be the one to ring the bell to start this thing to begin with. I can only wonder what the hell he's thinking. And Jane grabs the back of my head and rams it into the ring post. I swing my face around the pole and fall onto the floor, selling the impact. That takes split-second timing to make it work. Oh god, they took out the protective mats for the floor as well. Jesus fuck, this hurts. Jane picks me up, takes another bulb, puts it across one of my boobs, I forget which, and breaks it with an elbow shot. Oddly enough, I'm more worried about the bra being shredded than how much that glass fucking hurt. I grab Jane and hold her by my side. I have no idea how I'm even doing this. Seriously. At this point, my vision's blurry. I'm losing blood. My body's going numb. Somehow I managed to slam Jane horizontally into the ring post. I'm still holding her, but I wind up collapsing onto the floor. God, I want to go home. This hurts. It's stupid. I'm starting to wonder if the 50-grand paycheck for this show's even worth it. It's probably going to cost that much to pay the fucking doctor bills. After a minute or two passes, Jane comes to and notices I'm almost out of it. I think Jane realizes that I can't run on my own, so she pulls me back to my feet and leads me to this area next to the curtain where some of the staff watches the show. Jane tells some of the crew to get a table ready with the fixings. It's basically code for 2 tables and with tons of bulbs and some wire. While they're setting everything up, Jane leads me to the upper balcony where the announcers and video crew set up shop. I know there's an open area for Jane and I to tumble onto the tables, but Jane wants me to slam her into the tables. After all, I'm supposed to be the baby face, so it's only fitting. Jane relays the instructions real quick and hoists me over her head. I come to and manage to slip off a reversal. We trade a few punches and I grab Jane by the neck and push her and myself off the balcony and into the tables. Everything broke as planned. The glass was everywhere and wire was sticking out of both of us and we were practically red with blood. Ref held the mic up to both of us, asking if we wanted to stop the match. Again, we said no. I barely got my no out. It was faint, but the mic picked it up and the fans cheered a bit. We stirred a bit for a couple minutes, trying to get our bearings, and I told Jane we needed to take it home, meaning we needed to wrap this thing up and end it. And so I got up on one knee and tried to pull Jane up with me. She was just about as out of it as I was. We eventually got back to our feet. Everything's a blur, so I'm just hoping we both make it to the ring. I rolled Jane under the wire and into the ring. I slide in myself and start to, quote, finish off Jane. I grab a giant mirror wrapped in barbed wire and put it over her. Someone from the crowd throws in a rubber chicken for me to use. Promotion was infamous for letting the fans bring weapons. So I slapped the mirror with the chicken a few times and then cracked it with a chair, but at that point something happened. Someone whacked me in the back of the head with a bulb. I heard Barry, one of the security guys, call for help and get someone restrained. Someone must have had enough and wanted to hurt me for whatever reason. I was down on the wood again, and Jane came to and realized something was wrong, that we're straying from the finish. I guess she tried to improvise by whacking another set of tubes into the back of my noggin, just like Jane earlier. Now I'm hanging with my arms over the wire facing the crowd. And from the corner of my eye, I managed to see the fan that attacked me just before security dragged out of the arena. Jody. What the fuck was she doing here? She wasn't supposed to know about this event. And how did she know it was Jane and I fighting tonight? The poster did specifically mention us. Poster did specifically mention us by names. Okay, that's a grammar problem on my part. My bad. That wasn't important now, as I realized by the buzzing sound that Jane had to improvise the end to the match. The end called for me to gently run a weed whacker on her back for a split second. Unfortunately, now it had to be reversed since I was down already. Even more unfortunate, the end didn't happen as someone else grabbed the mic and screamed for the match to end. Stop this fucking match now! I'm not sure who it was since I had my back turned, but eventually the guy came around to my side to get me to agree to end the match. Technically, the match cannot end until one says I quit, so it was up to me. I still didn't recognize who it was, even with temporary 66% of my vision focused. I think this guy might be the head of the State Athletic Commission. The ringside area was getting flooded with security, paramedics, and even a few cops. Apparently not everything was squared away after all. Either that or maybe the promoter told him that two girls were going to do a hardcore match. That is somewhat taboo for some reason. Shit like this is why all you see on TV regarding women in wrestling is nothing more than lame auditions for modeling contracts. They're too afraid of women getting hurt, like it'll mark the end of civilization as we know it, as if stuff like that this isn't going on anywhere else in the world. I grabbed the mic from the state prick official and got up to my feet, hobbled over to Jane. It felt like an eternity before I brought the mic to my lips, but Jane wanted to make things right. She took the mic from me, and I couldn't believe it. Daria, I quit. The timekeeper rang the bell, and I collapsed into Jane's arms. She fell back and onto the ground as well, catching me. I turned around to lay back, trying not to look like I was muff diving into my best friend. Everyone knew we were best friends. Storyline in real life. That was what made it a different kind of match than any other. We've given more than our fill for the fans. The ring's a mess. We're covered in blood. Glass chunks are embedded in our skin. And now it's over. Would we have done all this differently? I don't know. There was so much we wanted to do around the middle of the match, but we assumed that we could handle more than we really could. Everything that happened afterwards was a blur. Some of the other talent from the show stopped by to visit us in the hospital. They were big, mean-looking guys, but once you get to know them, they're no less tamer than Trent and Jesse. We were told that a news crew arrived at the arena trying to get material for a sensationalized story about women being abused for profit. Luckily, our names and faces weren't shown. Hopefully, we'll be long gone before word gets out. The things friends do for money. The end.
That was sweet.
So yeah, I wrote a fanfic which was basically a booked hardcore match.
That was sweet.
Aw, thank you. That was the last fanfic I ever wrote. And it's close to 10 years ago to the day.